If you remember from one of our first sections, we discussed the concept of absolute value, where the idea is absolute value tells us the distance a number is from zero. If I tell you that the absolute value of x is 5, there are two possible values that x can be. X can either be 5 or x can be -5, because if you remember, the absolute value of 5 is 5, and the absolute value of -5 is also 5. Either of those solutions will work. When you expand those absolute value equations a little further to perhaps something like the absolute value of 3x minus 2 equals 1, you have to take into account both the positive and the negative options. I encourage my students to label these pieces as A and B and set up two equations, A equals B and A equals -B. Notice the left side does not change. So when I write these two equations, I end up with 3x minus 2 equals 1 and 3x minus 2 equals -1. I can now solve both of these. Adding 2 to both sides, I get 3x equals 3, or x equals 1. Here I get plus 2. I end up with 3x equals 1. Dividing by 3, I get x equals 1/3. It is important to take both of these equations and plug them back in to make sure they both work, because sometimes that negative can throw you off and you may have made a mistake, so you want to check to make sure both solutions hold true. If there is an absolute value expression on both sides, don't do anything different. So for example, if I have the absolute value of x minus 4 equals the absolute value of 2x plus 1, if I consider these to be a and b, I'm still going to have a equals b and a equals -b. So I end up with x minus 4 equals 2x plus 1. And I end up with x minus 4 equals -2x plus 1. Don't forget to distribute that negative to everything. Here, I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. I end up with -x minus 4 equals 1. Adding 4 to both sides, I end up with -x equals 5, or x equals -5. Likewise, on this side, I'm going to first distribute my negative. So I end up with -2x minus 1. Adding 2x to both sides, I have 3x minus 4 equals -1. I add 4. 3x equals 3, or x equals 1. Two solutions which I can then check and verify that they work. Where your problems are going to occur, and you just have to make sure you understand the idea of absolute value, is consider something like this. First of all, the absolute value is not by itself, and I have to get that to occur first. So I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides, and I end up with the absolute value of 6x minus 7 equals -2. Now, normally this is the part where we would have A and B, and we would set up the two values. But notice here, we have said that the absolute value equals a negative number. From our definition of absolute value being a distance, we know that absolute value can never be a negative number. And so this one, we don't have to go any further. There is no solution. If you did work this out, when you plugged both answers back in, you would find out that neither statement would hold true. And hopefully that would keep you from making a mistake as long as you remember to check it. However, if you recognize from the get-go that absolute value cannot be negative, you do not have to complete that process.